Yes, hello everybody. Welcome to Full Course Yellow. We haven't done this for a while, and I think it shows. We are back. We've had a few technical problems. It's all too early in the night for me. Too early in the week. It's far too early in the night. So I'm a bit thrown at the moment. But anyway, welcome back to Full Course Yellow. Thank you for joining us. Those of you who are watching at the new night and the new time, Wednesday nights at 8:30. Here on the show, as you can see, we've got a cast of thousands tonight. Stuart is with us, Chris, we've got Doc, we've got Richard, and we've got Peter again. So, yes, we're just going to have a bit of a chat about what's been happening in the wonderful world of all things motor. So, yes, we'll fire up some news because a few things have been happening. We'll get onto the drag racing thing in just a moment when a few more people join us. But for those of you who don't know, it's a major announcement today that the people behind the Australian Top Fuel Championship have effectively brought all the warring parties together finally. And it looks like we're going to have a unified Australian Drag Racing Championship. Announcements will be made at the Bend Motorsport Park later at the end of the month.
26th of May.
Yes. And
several decades late, but okay.
Yeah, certainly. Well, let's hope that it actually hope it actually sort of works and everybody involved. So far now, what the interesting thing is, the people behind the breakaway group, 400 Thunder, or a part of the breakaway group, the people who've been running the nitro funny cars and that sort of thing, and a lot of the meetings that are coming out of Sydney and Willowbank, they've said that the Winter Nationals at Willowbank will be their last meeting. They will effectively wind up that promotional side of the company. Now, the IHRA, as an alternative sanctioning body to ANDRA, that will continue, but the 400 Thunder promotional group will basically will shut its doors, and the major meetings will be held under the banner of this new National Drag Racing Association. So run by Andy Lopez and Nathan Prendergast. So that's let's keep our fingers crossed. As Stuart was saying, this has dragged on for so long. So many people are warring with each other and arguing, and the sport, which could be absolutely huge, has really suffered. Now, the other good news is that one of the things that will be announced, according to the press release today, is a national live television package for all of their major events. So I would be assuming, in light of what's been happening with the Top Fuel Championship and their relationship with Channel 7 and 7 Plus, that's probably going to continue, which would be fantastic, because 7 Plus have done a fantastic job. Was watching over the weekend, watching on Saturday, just the whole afternoon, right into the night, just covered, and really, really good coverage. Nothing fancy, just really strong professional coverage, and that's the sort of thing that you want. So, so good luck to all those people. Let's have a look if we've got someone who will be, I imagine, will be happy about that. Good day to Mad Cow Mark. Good evening to you. Thanks for joining us on the new night. Also, another regular box is joining us again, and of course Paul Vandenacker as well. Yes, almost a full house tonight. Yes, so I think this is about one of the biggest lineups we've had for a while. I suppose this is what happens after you take a couple of weeks off and you come back at an earlier time slot. So. Anyway, let's talk about what's happening. The Formula One is finally back, and we saw the Miami Grand Prix on the weekend. And the question is, Max Verstappen. I mean, how good is this bloke? I mean, generally, I mean, we know that the car is
how good is Adrian Newey?
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, how good
is Adrian Newey is a more pertinent question.
Well, that's it. But the point is, the car has got to be driven, and
I guarantee. But he came from ninth. Car or a good car.
But if we don't tell Sergio to push, crash happen, we'll catch him.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing that's going now. Christian Horner's come out and said that both drivers were fully informed. They were told there, but the argument that was coming out of out of the people who were monitoring the radios, and particularly this came from Anthony Davidson on the Sky coverage. He was monitoring the radios as he does, and he was saying that he said it's very. He said Max is constantly being told what the gap is between he and Sergio, and constantly being kept informed about what was happening. Whereas on on Sergio's side, it was the radio was fairly quiet. Now Sergio hasn't really complained much about it, but certainly he
knows he's a number 2 driver.
Well, you would hope he knows.
Germanic background at Red Bull, you're the number 2. Doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, how fast you are. If you're not a Germanic driver, you're number 2.
Yeah, well, that was certainly the case in the days of Vettel and Webber and Vettel and Ricciardo. Incidentally, Dan Ricciardo is going to finally get behind the wheel of that car. Coming up just after the British Grand Prix, there's a test session coming up after the British Grand Prix, and Dan Ricciardo will be getting behind the wheel of that car. So his first time back in a Formula One car for quite some time.
Just before we go,
I'm pretty sure the coverage we had on the weekend, there was a shot of Dan Rick, and the crowd cheered.
Oh, yeah, he's massively popular. Massively popular.
Before we stray too far from that comment, is Liam in it that weekend as well too, or is he scheduled this soon as well?
I haven't heard anything. Liam Lawson. I suppose it would depend on his commitments with Super Formula in Japan.
It is. I know. I just
haven't seen there, but I would assume that if he's available, he will probably get behind the wheel as well, because there's no doubt that they're having a very close look at him. And even Dan said in the comments that I saw from Dan, he even said himself that he's not looking at this as an audition to get back behind the Red Bull. It's basically to just to prove to himself that he's still got it and he's still comfortable, because he's saying
and promotion.
And to let people know that, hey, I'm still out there, and hopefully if he sets some good times and does a good job, that it will just sort of say to those people who might be looking for drivers next year, like, hey, I am still here. One of the teams that might be looking for drivers, I don't think Daniel is going to go anywhere near, and that could be McLaren, because the word is getting around now that Lando Norris is getting heartily sick of the fact that the McLaren isn't improving, and he's also getting a bit nervous that this young kid from Melbourne called Oscar is sort of outshining me. And Oscar, despite all finishing so far down the field, is apparently getting a lot of good feedback from the McLaren team. He's got a pretty good coach.
He's got a pretty good coach.
Before we run away from Lando or Norris too much as well too, there was another incident on the weekend where he was dodging human witches' hats again. So there's another one, 3 for the year so far. They're going to have to put on the investigation book. So this one was a marshal, but what he was doing in that particular spot, hopefully they'll identify him.
I didn't see that one, Doc.
No, I didn't see it. I know they've been talking about it.
And Norris was coming in to do what was he doing again? Anyway, it's all under investigation again. He just missed a marshal, just a pit lane marshal, and the in-car footage is quite close. Sky Sports did have it up, but once the investigation was underway, it was publicised. They quickly ripped it down, but I think there's some bootleg copies going around in places. So if you want to have a look at it, but the in-car footage is the best to see how close he missed him.
Well, the fact that he missed him is good, but we haven't had a good year for sort of crowd invasions. I mean, nothing will ever top the recent crowd invasion by the protesters at the Formula E race, who came and were going to glue themselves to the track in order to protest about the incredible wasteful car race that was going on through the streets, until someone happened to tell them that the E in Formula E actually stood for electric. But anyway, nonetheless.
They could have protested.
I don't like them
out.
so much. I'll glue their hands there and they'll force them to watch it.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that'd be the ultimate penalty. They've got to.
Ultimate
It's a
punishment.
wonder they don't glue the spectators down. I have tried. The cars are a lot faster now. They are good, but that sound, that noise, I just can't live with it. It really.
I haven't heard
so
anything
bad.
like that since, the Dodgem cars that they used to have at Luna Park.
Yep.
Actually,
Yeah,
the Dodgem
it's,
cars probably sounded faster.
Yeah.
It's like watching.
Actually, can I circle around before we go too much further? Because there was something else about Red Bull and the radio chatter on the weekend that I want to point out. Now, at Baku, a certain driver decided to give some of Max Verstappen a bit of his own back and didn't give way. And there was actually radio chatter with noses out of joint about it at Miami. Seriously. They were having a go at somebody who was doing to them what Max has been doing to everybody else for seasons. And it's like, wow, gee, easy to get you guys ruffled up.
I don't think it takes. It's like father, like son. I mean, it doesn't take much to get Max riled up, and I don't think he forgives and forgets. And certainly the reputation of his father Jos, who, as you'll see at the bottom, actually won his first rally on the weekend. So I suppose congratulations in order to Jos Verstappen. But what worried me is when I read the article, is it pointed out the fact that Jos Verstappen is actually 10 years younger than I am. So
Well, that hurts.
That's depressing.
While we're playing Formula One bingo on F1 drivers, there's a few more that I've noticed have popped up the last couple of days as well too. Alex Albon as well too has come out and said he was very frustrated with his team because I don't know whether it was an individual engineer on the team radio or it was the whole team. They were telling him to push when he didn't think he needed to, and then they were saying he needed to be conservative when he thought he needed to push. So hopefully they'll work that out in the debriefing. Also, the Captain Obvious award this week goes to Ralph Schumacher. And we couldn't let yes, I know. He's been throwing his hat in the ring a bit more than Martin Brundle and a few others lately, or Jackie. But anyway, Ralph decided to come out with the Captain Obvious Award of the week. I don't have the trophy with me. I've lent it to another mate at the moment who's going to give it to a supercars driver. But he said that Lewis Hamilton is wearing these designer Larry clothes because he's seeking attention at the moment. So I just wanted to say thanks, Ralph, for pointing that out to you. And none of us have noticed that the last 10, 15 years that they've gradually
Lewis
got.
needs attention.
But
Isn't that
however,
like one of the qualification requirements to be a Formula One driver is be an attention seeker?
Lewis likes
Master of the bleeding obvious, I see.
Anyway, also Jensen Button has got his different podcasting social media outlets, and I think it's this one actually raised a few eyebrows, and it might be somewhere near the mark. This particular comment is that Hamilton's options are drying up once his contract finishes up at the end of this year because he probably thought he was just a shoe-in at Ferrari or wherever he wanted to go. Now there's talk that no one actually really wants him, and so Lewis is coming out and saying that I'm going to stay with Mercedes. So there might be something.
I think he was going to stay at Mercedes. I think he was always going to stay at Mercedes. The interesting thing, I mean, it's the same. It's the same with the problem that Daniel has got. It's also the same, the same problem that all of the young guys trying to get into the sport out of Formula 2, like Teo Pacher and even although he's having a bit of a tough year at the moment, young Jack Doohan. But the problem that Oscar had getting in as well. I mean, there's only so many seats to go around. And I don't know about Ferrari. When you had mentioned Ralph Schumacher, I thought that your comment was because he's made another comment as well in terms of the obvious is basically that for the problem with Ferrari at the moment is not so much the cars, it's the drivers, and if only there was a young driver somewhere sort of hanging around that could possibly jump into who could possibly jump into that car, that would be good. Somebody who has recent experience and perhaps has a famous name behind him. That he'd do wonders apparently. But anyway,
wonders when it comes to multi-million dollar bills. Ask Gunther.
The other thing that came up from the weekend from Miami was it was sort of Formula One meets the WWE. They had the big the big introduction, and and there was the way to
Rich.
Pom poms.
Were you watching it live, and did they have that
Yes.
on the coverage? Did they have that
They
on the
did,
local
yeah.
coverage?
Yeah.
Did you get your pom poms out too, Peter?
No. They.
What did you think?
It was tacky. It was very. I'm allowed to say it. It was
You're
very
laughing,
American.
When you
You're allowed to
laugh,
say
you
it.
just make everyone else laugh. Richard's laugh makes the rest of us laugh.
It was very American.
How about you saying it was
American
very
pom-poms.
NASCAR?
It was very NASCAR, and
Very.
they had an orchestral thing which was apparently composed by that Will.I.am, and then they had some guy who I've never heard of introducing the drivers, and the only one that sort of again attention seeking, the only one that sort of played
Lewis
the game
made it
was
there.
Lewis Hamilton. With the rest of them sort of shunned him, and
You know what? Peter, what do you think of this, Peter? I know what you're talking about here, and I haven't seen much of the pom poms, thank God. However, I did see a picture of someone decided that a photographer took a picture of Lewis. He even it was bright and all that, but it even had a great big Mercedes logo on it. So they're obviously in conjunction supporting him upon this. Anyway, I just think I'll leave it alone. I'm not a huge. I do like Lewis, but I just think Ralph actually did have a half a point. Anyway,
and I
It
don't
was
think
so tacky. Yeah, it's a wonder they could even get across the stage and without sticking to it. It was so appalling. How did they get Verstappen to agree to it? That's what I want to know. Without hitting someone,
I think he felt like hitting someone, because and he actually
No. He doesn't hit anyone unless he's got his wheel in his hand.
and 4 wheels are
And I think he and Perez were actually penalised because they were late to the proceedings, so they actually got.
I can see the point behind it all. I mean, because as you say, it's very NASCAR. It's very. And remember when they did it at Bathurst all those years ago, with that guy who couldn't pronounce anybody's name, especially Antonio Giovinazzi, who was racing there.
Giovinazzi.
And coming up is Antonio Giovinazzi.
Graphic Natural Australia. Yeah, that's all right. Sounds like a news
So
report.
much for multiculturalism.
Yes. So, speaking of the Formula W, the Formula One Academy has started, and they are promoting it. I actually got some promotional stuff just out of the blue, saying, but it started off very quietly, but they have actually had a race. And I haven't seen anything much about it at all. But after the event, I got a press release and also some information and a media kit and all the rest of it. So the Formula One Academy for young women drivers, and look, it's desperately needed. I mean, if we don't have more women involved in motorsport, as soon as possible, the sport is finished. That's it. It's gone, and it should be. Because you've got half the population of the country, or more than half the population of the country and the world, sitting there, and if they're not involved, and we've seen what's happened now with cricket and with football, the number of young women involved. I've got some friends their young daughter is playing local women's football, and Doc, I mean, you umpire women's football like at a suburban level, and
I umpire with female umpires alongside in football as well too, plenty of times.
And it seems to be going absolute gangbusters.
Yep, I did a girls' game down at VFLW Division, whatever, down at Pearsdale on Saturday night last week, and highly supported. What I did find, which was encouraging and great, was They held it after the men's game, which is a senior game in the afternoon, which incidentally I did. So it was a good back-to-back, except for the hail and the rain and the freezing cold conditions. But there was a few 44-gallon drums that were lit up around the ground, as they do in.
Oh, I love that. Love that.
Yeah, the 44s were lit up. There was a few marquees with a few tunes that were keeping it just a little alongside beat going on. And wholeheartedly, the whole crowd in their cars in the dark, well, the lights are on, of course, because it's a well-lit ground, and supported the local football. And, yeah, it was freezing cold, but people, I reckon probably 80% of the crowd still stayed back and watched the girls' game.
Yeah,
men's
that's really good. I've seen that at a few games where it's like, you know,
my apologies for interrupting, Brett. It was like they made it a ladies' day as well too. So there you go, made a whole event of it.
Yeah, so yeah, that's good, and it is one thing that the sport needs to develop. Just there about that, something that's come tomorrow night on In Pit Lane at 9 o'clock on Channel 31. Our guest is Michael Stratus from Motorsport Australia, and we talk about the Phillip Island Speed Series event coming up this weekend, and there's actually some small fields, but there's some quite good fields. The production car field with the GT4 cars is particularly impressive, and it seems to be a pretty good card for this weekend. But we speak to Michael about it, and one thing that I did raise with him, and that he will talk there, is something that SB was saying last weekend in October. 3 national events: Phillip Island for Island Magic, the Adelaide 500, of course, and possibly the AASA at Calder Park. Is there a problem getting officials for events? And the answer is yes. It's a huge problem at the moment. When we were down a couple of weeks ago for the August or for the Access event down at Pyark with the Australian Prototype Championship, speaking with our mate Jeremy, who's one of the officials down there, a member of the In Pit Lane family, and he was just saying that, yeah, he said it is becoming a real problem because there's so many events on, and it's becoming just so damn expensive. I mean, I spoke to another.
Brett, so speaking of Jeremy, you just said, I have it on tonight, the T-shirt. Remember when the Geelong Revival clashed with Phillip Island at the last event, and Jeremy was saying that that was only 2 events they were having.
I'm not sure. Does that clash? That usually clashes with Island Magic as well. So is that?
Yeah, that's
clash?
what I'm saying. The last one did, and Jeremy said,
"Well, that would be 4. That would be 4 events. That would be 4 events happening then."
Yeah. So if Jeremy said he was going to do one day at one day at the other. But he said there was a massive shortage between just the 2 events, let alone 3 or 4.
Paul is saying, I heard. I don't know if it was. It might have been on 3. Yeah, Peter.
It was.
Yeah, I heard it today as well. I'm driving along, and I flicked on the radio, and suddenly I heard a radio ad for the Speed Series, and it was like, what the? So they are actually promoting it, which is a good thing.
That's probably because 3AW is part of the Nine Network.
Nine Network, yeah.
It's on Stan.
It's on, yes.
Hutchie's little sideshow.
I think, there's a chain link there.
Yeah, I think so. But anyway, it's good.
Well, there's the date for you. 24th to 26th of November.
Well, that sounds about the same weekend. So it looks like there's 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. It sounds like it might be the week before, but either way, it's becoming a massive problem because as Jeremy was saying, and talking to quite a few sort of flaggies, and we know ourselves that when people say like, why don't you cover stuff at Winton? Why don't you cover more stuff down the island? Why aren't you doing this race and that race? To go down and do these things costs, the last time I stayed down at Phillip Island, we went down for the historics. That weekend set us back about $750. We had to get accommodation for a couple of nights down there for myself and the other guys who came down, for Jason and Jaden. It's not cheap to go to these things, and the price
What's
of
the price
accommodation
of fuel at the moment?
The price of fuel, the price of accommodation is ridiculous. In fact, I was looking at something for
Fuel's
not a
just
motor.
come down, actually. My gas has come down to 89 cents, so I'm wrapped because I'm driving on gas at the moment. So
yeah, but your gas doesn't fill a Valiant, and let's see, with two-barrel carbs, that's here to to Phillip Island and back to Cranbourne, and it's on fumes. That's a 65-litre tank.
And
Plus,
from what I
Cranbourne to
hear,
Melbourne.
Do like me. I bought a
remember-
house which was smack between Phillip Island and Sandown. That works for me.
I had the same
You're
intent
on the wrong
12
side of the
years
city.
ago too, Richard. I had exactly the same. And you know what? Stuart's going to be reaping the benefits in a few years' time when Avalon.
Yes, when it moves to Avalon.
Yes, we'll be
When I'm gonna have to-
it's costing me $1.09 a litre in gas to get across to Avalon.
from what I hear, Doc, a rumour that you're not driving on very much at all at the moment.
Ah, yes, yeah. I'm jump starting the car even as we speak. It's not working. I'll be jump starting it at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, and I'll be jump starting it at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon.
Buy a new battery.
I have.
Yes.
I've got a
They're
bank of
not
them there.
that
to change
expensive.
them on over. I've got
And make
3 or
sure the
4
alternator is actually charging the dang thing.
Yeah,
No, it is.
That's good point, Stuart.
It's got a volts meter in the dash of the XRs, so I can tell it's actually doing it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be working the gauge. However, I've got a bank of batteries, 4 or 5 in the corner, all on chargers. I just need to change one over, and I've got to add too much other things to do. I'm just jump starting. I just put one of them in the passenger seat floor, and I just jump it. So there you go. As of this morning,
Jump the battery because that's not very high.
Last night I got caught out though. I was sitting in the city about 500 meters from the studio, and I couldn't go.
Yeah, see, this is the advantage of a Valiant.
Also,
It's Andy Hill.
as SB
Just pop it in
is
gear and
saying
release the
there
clutch.
about volunteers for that weekend. So apparently, the Supercrossers is on at Marvel Stadium that weekend as well. So so they'll be looking for their for their stuff.
Oh, they
God
can pay
knows
someone.
the way. Well, look. It's the funny thing is, in terms of getting sort of young people, it was something that came up last week at this time. Motorsport Australia had an online forum for their members with Eugenia Rocker and various staff members, talking about answering questions from members, and this was sort of raised. And one of the things that came up from a young marshal was, basically, it's a bit like RMITV at the moment. I mean, we're having an amazing year of volunteers, but what they're all saying is, how does this, where does this lead to? And this is what this kid was saying, is that he said, I'm into motorsport. I became a marshal. I volunteered, but I want to know where it goes because I'm wandering around. I'm with people who have been doing this for 30, 40 years. And they're still paying for it themselves, and they're still getting up at ridiculous hours in the morning, and and sit in all the very bad conditions. And it's like, how do I progress this in terms of if you're a young driver, there is a possibility that one day you might get into supercars or beyond that and actually get paid for doing it. Whereas the number of paid spots for officials is very, very limited. So I don't know what they're going to do
Get
about
into
it.
cams.
Well,
There's plenty of junkets going on in cams.
Well, that's one of the things. I don't think they had a sort of a very good answer. I mean, but you can see as we talk about it. So tomorrow night we talk about it briefly with Michael, and it's not sort of his area to sort of discuss too much. But and obviously he says all the right things, and which we all know that without the volunteers we don't have a sport. And everybody is aware of that, and everybody's very grateful for the time everybody puts in. But at some stage, we are going to get to the point, which has happened in New Zealand on a couple of occasions, where they've had to say, "I'm sorry, we simply can't run this race meeting because we don't have the sufficient number of officials to make this happen." And then sort of everybody jumps up and down and goes, "Oh, this is a disgrace! I spend a lot of money to enter in my car and go racing." And it's like, okay, well, perhaps perhaps you need to throw sort of, $25, $50 or something on top of the entrance fees to
Just pay for some
help just pay some petrol money or some accommodation or
per diem.
something. Yeah, just a per diem. It doesn't have to be paid, but I mean, when we do
Per
something
diem.
like
So
Formula,
here's $100 for your flag for all your marshals for the weekend. Spend it on subsidise your accommodation, or spend on some fuel, or buy yourself.
They'll give you a bottle of wine at a ceremony. They won't actually spend money on you.
Well,
They'll
But-
spend
but that's
$35,000
what
on
needs-
the set
that's
of
what
tires
needs
for
to
the
be
weekend,
done.
but not on anything else.
that's what needs to be done, because when we go out and we do something like Formula SAE, as you know, there is a per diem. It's now people don't get paid for it. It's not a thing like we do on a commercial shoot. But if you go out and we do something, RMI TV goes out and we go out and do something like Formula SAE, which we did for many years. The people, the crew who came along, got a per diem. It was like, I think it was about $110 a day or something, just to sort of, to cover your food and your expenses. And of course, we paid for accommodation as well. That's where the big slice of, out of the budget for the last one, 80% of the budget went on getting that accommodation from the Airbnb place or the motels we were staying in up at Wangaratta. So yeah, I don't know if you're a flaggy or a fiery or somebody, and you're giving your time for nothing, and they want you each and every week, and you're rushing back and forwards to Phillip Island or up and down the highway to Winton every couple of weeks. I'd be certainly jack of it by now. I'd be saying no, that's enough. That's I think I've done my time, and yeah, thanks for coming, but I'll leave it to somebody younger and richer now. And if the young people who are younger and richer aren't turning up and doing it, where does the sport go next?
Just quickly, you mentioned Winton. Great segue, thank you, Brett. Before we go across the knackers, Mark Torbett sent me a message. So I'm not sure if you got it.
Yeah, I got. Yep, yeah, I got
That's
it.
all right. He's going to take the Cortina Sports sedan up to Winton Friday. So
On Friday, yeah.
I don't think we'll be able to join him. However, hopefully he'll message on and give us a little bit of an update on how things went on that.
I was what Nick is saying. Supercross only needs a handful of flaggies who come from the two-wheel side. So yes, because there is sort of although there is some crossover, and Paul's one of them who cross over between sort of two and four wheels. There is a very dedicated group of officials, volunteer officials as well, with Motorcycling Australia, who go and do the same, who do the same sort of thing. So at some stage I don't know what we're going to do, because it'll be very expensive. Paul also saying that James Taylor came through the ranks as a trackee at Sandown to hold a big job at Supercars. So yeah, it can it can happen. We know, obviously we know of people in Motorsport Australia who have done time as flag marshals, and they've worked their way through and become sort of like getting paid to turn up and do things in senior official roles. But I still think that at the top level, it's at the Formula One level, for the Grand Prix, for the MotoGP, and for supercars, there has to be a core group of senior officials who at least get, who just basically travel around. Not everybody, but just sort of, whether it's at each flag point or somewhere, that there is, a senior marshal, a senior supervisor, who can sit there and who does get paid, and who can say to the trainees and the younger people coming through, hey, you do this long enough and you do this well enough, you can be in my position and you can actually get paid to be here.
Keeps everything smooth. Speaking of expenses, though, too, I'm not going to. I might touch on the source. Pretty straightforward. One of Brett's friends, Brett keeps tabs on this particular guy's social media profile quite regularly, and he's pretty high up there because everyone jumps on board across Australia. Mr. Patterton as well too came out with some of the wildcard figures as well, and our friends at Speed Cafe, who gave us a good rap the last week. So won't.
Yes, thank you to Ivan for the plug in speedcafe.com.
Thank you. However, did you guys see the figures on what it costs to enter a wild card into the Enduro events this year and back in 2021, and also a non-Enduro event this year and back? Anyone want to have a stab in the dark on the figures? Brett, you're excluded if you already know, like I do.
Okay. Anybody want to give up?
Okay. How does 50K go for a endurance event if you wanted to put a wild card in? That's obviously supplying your own car. However, so if you want to put it in, say, well, it used to be Gold Coast, but now it's, say, Sandown or, Sandown or Bathurst 1000 this year, it's 50K. That does include your tyres. You can purchase another 3 sets more if you want to. And it includes your garage and also includes your fuel for the weekend. But of course, your all running expenses are still yours. Back in 2021, a couple of years ago, it was half that price, 25 grand if you were going to put it in. So that's why you've got Walkinshaw United coming out this week and saying we're not going to put a Mustang in the Enduros, not only because they've got to pay drivers and etc. like that, and you've got damage sometimes, but it's doubled in price. And well, it's 25K for non-enduro, but it was 15K a couple of years ago. So there you go. That's what.
Well, the thing is, those prices are going up everywhere. I mean, in terms of, Richard, a round of the state series for you in the XL. I mean, what's that setting you back now?
Oh, the full weekend at Phillip Island was nearly $800 without a Friday. Then there's no Friday rate, private practice. And then there's that was even for Winton, wasn't much short of that. And then you throw in a private practice and accommodation now Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and if you're doing it driving home yourself, you might want to stay on Sunday night as well. It starts getting a bit pricey. But
so like
you got to spend what you got to spend.
Like a holiday in Singapore with supercars, expensive.
Yes. Well,
you got to wonder how much of that price is
with pom-pom.
Go, Richard.
Yeah, I was going to say is harping back to getting women in motorsport. I noticed that they seem to be focusing on younger women when it's perhaps there's a core of women out there who never mention that they love motorsport and would love to get into it, but they think they can't. Even when they're getting older, they've got money, where the young girls don't have money. And Motorsport Australia focuses largely on young girls, not anyone who's older who may not be very competitive, but they've got the money or they've got the partner who'll
Hang on, why has being older ever affected competitiveness for drivers? By the time you can afford to own a GT3 Porsche and go racing in it, you're probably going to be slower than anyone you're going to put into the Porsche.
Well, I wasn't necessarily thinking, but a Toyota 86 or a improved production car or something like that. Yeah, we need all the people we can get.
Well, one woman who has the money and is getting back behind the wheel after a very considerable break this weekend at Phillip Island is young Renee Gracie.
Yes.
And
WA she was in 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Well,
she raced in WA.
She was.
She raced in WA. Yes. So, but she's racing now. The interesting thing is, this is
here we go.
It would be safe to say that the people behind a lot of the people involved in the Speed Series are not all that keen to give Renee a lot of publicity, which I think is pretty.
What? Just the livery of the car is beautiful.
Yeah, I think that. Well, that's it's the sponsor now. I didn't have the chance to point out, but I mean, if I'm sure we all remember that there was a time when at the very top level of Australian motorsport, so-called, the supercars, we had one of the regular cars, one of the regular competitors being sponsored by Australia's largest brothel. And they ran for absolutely
Superman,
years
what's that thing called the Daily Planet? He used to be a journalist at, I think, was Superman, Clark Kent, the Daily Planet, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. Yes, a well-known publishing
The difference is
organisation.
whether it's a guy who owns it or a girl who's doing it for
Yes.
herself.
No sexism
That's
here.
always been the way with society.
Yeah, and I think and I think it shows up at the moment is the fact that like what Renee's do. If Renee's keen to get back in and into the
Let her do
sport
it.
that she was doing it there, she's got the money, and it's like she hasn't done it, certainly hasn't done anything illegal. I don't know anything about I sort of I honestly say I don't know about anybody else, and you know that if I had seen it, I would tell you I've seen it. I have not seen OnlyFans. I have no idea. I'm assuming I know what's on it, but I haven't seen it. I have not seen it at all.
Sweet and innocent.
Keep going.
Why am I going to spend however much
We're
it is
meant
to
to
go and
believe this.
Boys, just remember, as long as Brett never appears on OnlyFans, we're safe. Okay.
Well, if there's, I don't know. I was going to have a chat to Renee on the weekend and see, and she's making good dough out of it apparently.
Making squillions.
Yeah, making so anyway. Yeah,
All right.
but anyway,
okay.
as I said, I know what it's roughly around. I know more about it from the fact that, and this has happened somewhere else because Mandy Rose, the WWE wrestler, got sacked from her position in the WWE because she had an OnlyFans account. And they said no, we don't want that sort of thing, and she got the sack. But as she pointed out, she said I earn more.
We had the sack already, just in a different way. That's
well,
all,
she apparently in the 2 weeks following her firing from the WWE, apparently she earned over $1 million US. On
it's all based on
OnlyFans.
subscriptions. I haven't seen it. I haven't subscribed to OnlyFans. Yes, I've seen mates bloody bring up like bootleg versions of it every now and again, but it's pretty straightforward. You pay, I don't know whether it's $5 or $50 a bloody month, whatever it comes down to, and then you can watch Renee's content from day to day and whatever she does, whether she goes having picnicking in the garden or turning on her fluorescent bedroom lights with a crystal ball or whatever they have on the show. Anyway.
No, I didn't know she had a crystal ball. I didn't know.
No, neither did I. I'll have to review my...
Just as long as it's only one.
If I had a crystal ball, I probably would make money out of OnlyFans. But
anyway, after the F1, she's probably picking up a set of pom poms now as well too. Who knows? So
well, there you are. But anyway, good luck to Renee. Welcome back, and
welcome back. And if we do set the track, I won't be afraid to walk up to her and talk about her racing.
No, well, in fact, if I can catch up with her for an in, and she's willing to do
I'd like to know who she's.
I'd be happy.
I assume she hasn't bought it. I assume, and this is obviously only. Hopefully, she can set the record straight if I do catch up with her, just like everyone else in the paddock when you're walking around. Who she's leasing that Audi R8 off. So
I did see somewhere. Yeah, it is a lease. It is some sort of a lease job or somebody else. But anyway, good luck to her.
Yep.
Got there. Speaking of drag race, Paul Vandenack is also saying the photos of the bend as they're going. And that is coming along. It is looking very, very impressive indeed. The track is.
Well, they said
I really want to get across to. I really want to get across at some stage to the bend. One of the problems that we're having with the bend, particularly with interstate tracks in general, because they don't know the show, but just in general, and we had this problem with Motorex on the weekend. I wanted to go to Motorex to shoot some stuff for the show for the news and all that, and it was. We need to cite a policy of a public liability policy of $20 million, and it must be made out to the organisers of Motorex. They must be added to that now we do have public liability insurance through RMITV, but in order to have them added just for the sake of me turning up with one camera was going to cost about $750, which obviously means that's out of the thing. Christian saying hello and goodbye. I'm assuming that's not as sinister as it sounds, because I think that he's off to the Nürburgring and off to Le Mans for both the 24-hour And the classic, I will point out, I said to, was talking to Pete before the show, and I will talk to him again later. Make sure you catch up with our mate John Hindhoff there, because John was in contact with me this morning, and he's doing. They are of course doing the Nürburgring 24-hour. Of course, Radio Le Mans will be in action. Haggerty Radio Le Mans will be in action at Le Mans 24-hour. And what he told me today is that they will also once again be doing the Classic as well. So that's fantastic news, because the Classic is a great event, and they do a terrific job. Do a terrific job of that. So yeah, good on you for.
Talking about high-end cars, I did some dock spotting. I didn't have a chance, obviously, to talk to you, Brett, last night. But on the way in on the Monash freeway last night, Zagami's, which is a prestige transport company for high-end cars around Victoria, had a bunch of cars on a couple of trucks. And one of them that caught my eye was a Aston Martin F1 limited edition, and it looked magnificent. So make sure anyone checks out that. There's one in Victoria right now, and it was on the back of a truck and getting absolutely one. If
There's
anyone
also I was going to say there's also a McLaren on the 58th floor of a building, and
no, 57th floor. Thank you.
50,
I'm going to do
57th
58th
floor
that's
of the building, and it's a wonderful. Yeah, I heard this on the way home, and I thought
Exhibition Street.
Yeah.
It's been listened to today. So,
well, mate, you don't. The guy who owns it, you do not deserve to have that car. If you're going to put that up there, as something to look at, as a piece of art on the 55th floor, and you're not driving it, get rid of it. It's a complete wank. So just leave it.
57th floor, and if he can, it's a $39 million penthouse, and I'm thinking if he can afford the car and afford the penthouse, he can hoist it up and down with a crane anytime he wants, because the money's no object. So he can
also afford to take it out on track days. He could put a young driver in it for track days. He could use it to generate, like money for charity by giving people rides on track days. There's 1,001 things he can do, but no, he just wants to. It's like one driver who will remain nameless. I said, "What do you do with all your cars?" And he said, "I open a bottle of beer." He said, "I sit on a chair." He said, "and I look around at them." He said, and they have a wank and go, they're all effing mine.
Anywho, if you haven't got the money to do exactly that, to have a wank or do any of that, have a bottle of beer, or you haven't got a penthouse.
I can't afford the beer.
Oh, this show's gone straight to Pornhub tonight. Are we streaming on the right platform?
I'm going to clean it up here.
Okay, I'm going to clean everything up, and I'm going to show some concrete.
Oh, you show some concrete.
Notice what's in the foreground here of the drag racing complex at the bend. Right here in the foreground. I'll just wave the mouse over this area here. What is this?
That is a burnout pad.
That is a burnout pad.
Okay.
That's exactly what
properly
it is.
designed, put in there. People are beginning to realize that people want to go to motorsports and have fun, have a show. That's why you put burnout pads in. If anyone's been watching YouTube events and what have you, would know of Cletus McFarland, of all people. Raceways in the US where he's holding events have poured concrete slabs because they've seen the size of the crowds that the burnouts attract. Okay. This is an Australian sport, people. Get behind it.
I was at Lardner Park a few weeks ago where they had a big show and shine, and of course, what did they have? Burnout. What did everybody want to look at? Just the burnout. Okay. Here I choking as I'm walking around to have a look at the exhibits, but no, everyone was there right up against the fence, getting hit by smoke and
bits of rubber and
that was our good friend Glenn Everett, Richard, that held that was Motorfest he held down there. That was good.
Now this is interesting. Just quickly from SB again, they will have a tractor pull strip, but also sand drags. Sand drags would be I haven't seen sand drags for I know that they do run
the tractor pull's got my attention.
Tractor pull's got my attention too.
So yes, so great move by Sam and the
can't be
team at the
beaten at a
bend.
tractor pull. There's two things that can't be beaten at a tractor pull. One is a tank. The other is a steam-powered traction engine.
I'll just anyway.
I watch
Quickly,
those things go full pull, and they are amazing.
on the opposite end of the scale, I've got something new. If anyone noticed recently in one of the Hyundai released, it's not everyone's cup of tea though either, the N-Vision 74 concept car. Actually, it's not bad on the eyes. I'm always never a big fan of Korean cars or something like that. That concept car is now going to be put in production. And something going back decades, people don't realise that Hyundai have been around a long time. They're just only new to Australia in the last probably 15, 20 years. They originally called one of their cars, which
80s?
was widely recognised and renowned back in its time, was called the Pony. So the new N-Vision 74 concept car is going to be released worldwide as the Pony. So well, good luck with that. Yeah. So one more thing. And if you want me to do a quick MotoGP wrap up, Brett?
Yeah, let's do a quick wrap up because Mr. Marquez is not going to serve his penalty after all.
Yeah, Mr. Marquez has tried to take his case to the Japan. Anyway, he just carried on like a pork chop, and they ended up, as you're saying, Brett. I think you've got it down there in the bottom ticker as well, though, too. They've reneged on his. First of all, everyone was crying out he needed a race penalty because other people have got that sort of stuff before, and he's got form in that more than anyone else. Especially Alessio Spargaro. I think we talked about Brett on the side a few weeks ago. However, they were going to give him a double long lap penalty, and that's now been withdrawn as well now too because he's served enough time away from the sport because of his broken base thumb, which I think 5 sets of doctors all advised him not to race for a couple of more races. So on that, which is a good segue from before, he is back at Le Mans this weekend in France in the MotoGP. So no longer. However, the guy did replace him for a little bit. I think Brad Binder will be out, but therefore the guy he had the crash with, Miguel Oliveira, is out this weekend because he had a shunt last race with Fabio Quartararo, and he's fractured his shoulder, poor old Miguel. So he's going to be replaced by, I think, Lorenzo Savadori? Yes. So anyway, so big news, and well done to Thriller Miller as well, though, too, for hitting the podium in the last race. Good luck at
and of course we know that Jack has won at Le Mans, and we always know, as if you've ever watched Truth in 24, that the excellent documentary on Audi's campaign to win the Le Mans 24-hour race. If you haven't seen Truth in 24, there's actually 2. The second one I don't think was as good as the first, but the first is fantastic. Truth in 24, it does pop up on YouTube. They take it down occasionally for copyright reasons, but you should be able to find it. But it's an amazing doco, beautifully filmed. Narrated by Jason Statham, the actor, and just really good. But as they say, the opening line, it always rains at Le Mans, and if it rains and Jack Miller's of a mind, we could see another win by Jack on the weekend because both he and of course Brad Binder, the KTM's did very well on the last race.
Certainly did.
Okay, so I think that's about all we've got time. Mad Cow Mark, I'll just quickly, Mad Cow Mark. Yes, I will check on that. Thank you. I won't put that up, but thank you very much.
Chris, your backdrop, please, where you was located.
I know where it is.
You
Richie?
do. We were there together, weren't we?
Yes.
Come on, Mr. Richie.
Yeah, it's
tell
not
the
there
fans.
anymore, unfortunately. I
No.
think they sold the business up, but they used to build them there.
Where at?
That's George. That's George. That's our mate George Vidovix. Yeah, that's the old headquarters of Python Cars, which is the new headquarters of Python. Because George, of course, as Chris was saying, sold the business, and as George said, the last time he came in to the show, he sold the business, and the guy he sold it to has restarted the business, and it's about 15 minutes walk up Belgrave Hallam Road from me at the moment, up near the just near the Hallam railway station. So it's not far away. So they are still building Pythons, and they're still doing the choppers, and they're doing some other engineering stuff, some automotive engineering stuff. So yes, they are. So Python is still going, and George, of course, raced just recently at I think it was Laguna Seca. I didn't. I should bring it up, but because he sent me some photos and some messages.
Us photos. Yeah, I'll try to bring it up as well though too.
Yeah, so
quite
he's
prolific. I'm just going to find. Oh, there we go.
with his McLaren.
Yeah, there we go.
He's McLaren. He's
He's
come up in
McLaren.
the world.
Oh yes. Oh, you haven't seen? You must. Yeah, no. George has a very nice very nice McLaren. I think it's an M1C or something. One of the early Can. There you go. The early Can-Am car.
Okay, that'll do. Yeah.
Yep, that will do. So there he is.
Yes.
That's
all right by me.
picture?
The yellow car.
Yeah,
That's George.
I can see it. Yeah.
Cool, there we go.
I'm disappointed again.
Obviously,
And if you
George.
really want to,
That's George in the background, and the black behind as well, too. Standing on.
and if you really want to be disappointed, Brett, just keep looking at Geordie Roddy's Facebook site. Have you seen some of the stuff which has come in recently?
I haven't seen, but yes, Geordie's got a very impressive collection. We're still waiting on. I don't know. Has he got the engine back from on the Cadillac yet?
We'll see him soon. I know he did just recently bought a Japanese Super GT car, which features which features in Gran Turismo. It's a Denso. I know so little about the Japanese GT, so I don't even know if it's a Toyota or a Nissan. But magnificent car.
Denso it will be I think it will be the Toyota. They're beautiful bits of work. I mean, because I went to the Super GT the Super GT round in Malaysia, and was very lucky to get in until they eventually realised that I wasn't supposed to be there and threw me out. So I got some very interesting and some very good close-ups of a lot of the technology on those cars and the attention to detail in terms of the aerodynamics of those cars at the time. They've wound it back a little bit. That's also on the bottom ticker tonight, is that the news, big news for the Super GT is it's one of the last categories or one of the last series that has a tyre war. And now Michelin have today announced that they are going, at the end of this season, they'll be pulling out of Super GT racing, which will leave Bridgestone and Yokohama as the only two tyre companies left. And they're also both saying, they don't think that they can fill the gap that Michelin is there. But the other interesting thing is we know that the Class 1 rules were set up so that we had so the cars in the DTM and the Super GT were running under the same rules. Now, when I went to Malaysia, I was at a media conference with the head of Super GT from Japan, and asked him about sort of the plans, because it was just after they got together. And he said to me at the time, he said, we contacted, when we set up this, to try and build up this category, we contacted the people at Supercars Australia and said, would you be interested in being a part of this? And at the time they weren't, but apparently there will be, coming up, there will be new talks between Super GT and DTM to try and come up with sort of a plan for what they do going forward. And once again, they've publicly said, we have invited and would love Supercars Australia to be a part of that discussion as well. So I don't think they will, but it'd be interesting if they did. So anyway, I think that's all we've got time for this week. Thank you very much. Remember to be watching In Pit Lane tomorrow night at the regular time of 9 o'clock with our guest Mark Stratus. Simon Astley came over all the way from Tasmania just to be on the show and play some music for us. Awesome. And we thank him for coming across. And he's playing a song plays out tomorrow night as well. It's even more sort of disjointed than you dodged a bullet. You dodged a bullet, Doc, because we had the only real, apart from the fire alarm going off, the other major technical problem we had was an auto cue which kept crashing and kept just sort of, words just kept disappearing as you were trying to read them. It was pretty chaotic.
Sounds like a DreamWorks movie.
Oh, it was wild. It was wild. So this is why I don't like auto cues. But anyway, We'll see you. We'll see you next week here at the same time. Hope you spread the word around. Let people know that we're on a new night, Wednesday nights.
New bet place.
Yeah, new time, 8:30, because it for people like Doc and Pete, not people who have to get up early in the morning. It was the 9:30 on Thursday was just a bit too late, and yeah. So anyway, we will see you all later. So thanks for joining us on Full Course Yellow. Until we see you on In Pit Lane tomorrow night on Channel 31 and on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel with some bonus content. We'll say from all of us here, thanks for joining us, and good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Good night.
Have a great week.